we truly appreciate him taking the time to be with us this afternoon to kind of carry you through a series of things that hopefully will enlighten you a little bit. But just to give you a little bit of a brief background on Mr. Prang, he oversees the nation's largest property assessment office, and he was elected in 2014. He managed the valuation of over $2 trillion in real estate, and that generates more than $20 billion annually for virtual public services such as public safety and education. With nearly 30 years in public service, Mr. Prang began his career in the Assessor's Office and served 18 years on the West Hollywood City Council, including 4 terms as mayor, focusing on housing, economic development, LGBTQ rights. Under his leadership, the office completed $120 million in modernization initiatives, earning Los Angeles County the prestigious Certificate of Excellence in Assessment and Administration twice. Currently, Mr. Prang serves as the president of the California Assessors Association, guiding the efforts to ensure fairness in property assessment statewide. He holds a degree from Michigan State University, James Madison College, and a certificate from Harvard University Kennedy School of Government. Jeff lives in Baldwin Hills with his husband and an award-winning music director, Ray. I'm gonna let you pronounce the last name so I don't. Viscara, so I didn't mess it up. But again, it is truly an honor for us to have him here this evening. So if you would, please help me welcome Mr. Prang.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. I would say of all the introductions I've had throughout my career, that one is the most recent. But it's a pleasure to be here in the city of Compton, to see so many friends, and hope we have an opportunity to meet some new folks. Happy to be able to be here to share some information about my office, about what we do. But I'm going to begin by telling you about my office and what we do not do. We do not collect property taxes. I am not the tax assessor. The person who collects property taxes has a very intuitive title. She is called the tax collector. Makes it easy. We are real estate appraisers, but we're not the ones who tell you how much you owe or collect that money. So just to give you a little bit of overview about my office, a lot of these, hello Mayor, nice to see you. It's, my office is one of those more obscure administrative offices, and a lot of people just don't know a whole lot about it. But I am one of 3 county-wide elected officials. Everybody knows the other 2. They're much more famous, maybe in some occasions infamous than me. That's the sheriff and the district attorney. My office, as a city manager had indicated, is the largest office of its type in the United States. We are responsible for locating and establishing the value for all taxable property in the county. My office has about 1,400 employees, of which nearly half are real estate appraisers, a budget of over $200 million. We're responsible for valuing 2.5 million real estate parcels and business assessments annually, that this year were valued at over $2.2 trillion, which generate revenues for vital public services, including public schools, city services, hospitals, parks, libraries, roads, police, etc. In a lot of ways, the assessor's office is the most important local government agency, because no other government agency can do their job until I've done mine. And if I've done my job well and thoroughly, then money which should be going into public services is left on the table. So this is part of the reason why I'm here today, is to raise the awareness about the important role my office plays in our community and help to untangle some of the confusion about who we are and what we do. So the assessor's role in the property tax administrative system is one piece of a very complex puzzle. The property tax system is designed for maximum public confusion. There are multiple departments that each have a different role in the system. So the way it works is that when you buy a house or you buy a property, you record a deed with the registrar recorder. If you do new construction, you get a permit from the city. So the cities send us those permits, the registrar recorders send us those deeds, and then we assign an appraiser to do a valuation of that property. We then turn that data over to another department most people are not familiar with. That is the auditor controller. The auditor controller is the one who tells you how much you owe. They apply the tax rates, they apply the special assessments, the direct assessments, but they don't interact directly with the public. They turn that data over to the treasurer and tax collector, who sends the bills and collects the payments. My primary role as assessor is the production of what we call the annual assessment roll. And the assessment roll is just kind of a fancy way of referring to the inventory of all taxable property in the county. Most people are aware that we're responsible for assessing land and buildings, but we also assess what is called business personal property, which includes furniture, fixtures, equipment, and machinery. Although we also are responsible for valuing mobile homes, boats, aircraft, both general aviation aircraft and commercial aircraft, such as those at LAX. And for some reason, we assess racehorses. We don't choose that, that's kind of a constitutional thing. The assessment roll serves a couple critical functions. Obviously, it's the basis of the property tax system. That's what your tax rate would be based on. Although it's also an important tool for a lot of local governments as they plan their budgets in anticipation of property tax revenue. And then thirdly, it provides some insight as to the health of the local real estate market. We work on a fiscal year of July 1st to June 30th, and we just closed our annual assessment roll, the 2025 assessment roll, at the end of June, and I am pleased to report that property values continue to rise across Los Angeles County. The total assessed value of property in the county increased by $82 billion, or 3.91% over last year, marking the 15th consecutive year of property value growth in LA County. As I mentioned, the total assessed value of all property in the county is now $2.176 trillion, which means that the market value is considerably higher. The two biggest contributors to the growth in property values were transfers of property. That's the buying and selling of property. We reassess your property whenever there's a transfer. And then the other one was Proposition 13 cost of living adjustment, which is capped at 2%. LA County this year, the assessment roll consists of 2,300,000 taxable real property parcels, over 160,000 business property assessments, 32,000 boats, and over 3,000 aircraft. Here in the city of Compton, the total assessed value of all taxable properties was nearly $10 billion. This value reflects the assessment of 15,483 single-family homes, 2,235 multifamily residences, 2,231 commercial and industrial properties. Property values in Compton grew at a faster rate than they did in the county, and at 6.8%, or a total $639 million increase over the 2024 roll value, which contributed to increase in your property taxes, which I presume is a great credit to exceptional city manager and some visionary members of the city council. From these assessments, our office can obtain some unique insight into the state of the local housing market. And this chart up here shows the median sales price for single-family residences, not including condominiums, in Compton and in some nearby communities. Countywide, the median sales price of a single-family home is $975,000. There's about 60 to 70 communities countywide where the median sales price exceeds $1 million. Compton is one of the more affordable neighborhoods in the county with a median sales price of $620,000. Seems like they're just giving houses away here. Minor attempt at humor. It did experience a slight drop in median sales price from the year before, 0.8%, but this finding differs from surrounding communities which all experienced increases. This probably has to do with just a couple of specific transactions that cause things to look somewhat askewed. As you can see, that we draw some comparisons to Carson, Long Beach, Linwood, Paramount, and Willowbrook. While my office is not responsible for generating revenue, revenue is the byproduct of what we do. So here's a look at how those funds are appropriated, approximately distributed throughout the county. First, property taxes are all local taxes. They don't go to the state. About 40 cents on every dollar of property taxes are allocated to public schools. In the Compton Unified School District 2026 budget, they're anticipating receiving $46 million in property tax revenues. In unincorporated areas receive about 24% of the property tax dollar. These are communities that are within the county but are not part of any incorporated municipality. The Board of Supervisors serves as the mayor and city council for those areas. Incorporated cities, including Compton and other cities, about 15% of property taxes are allocated to municipalities. Different cities get different amounts of money. There's a lot of cities that incorporated in the late 1950s that they call no or low property tax cities. So they'll get a lot of money from them. Compton does get about $7 million in property tax revenues, which funds city services. And then there's about 14% of every dollar goes to the successor agencies, to the former redevelopment agencies that used to operate in the county. And then special districts, which includes like water districts, they get about 7% of property taxes. In addition to the above allocations, property taxes also fund critical infrastructure and services in our community. Obviously, public safety supports salaries, training, and supplies of public officials, including law enforcement, firefighters, and emergency medical technicians. Public parks and recreation facilities are often built and maintained using property tax revenues, and some of the most critical functions of municipal government, that's streets and infrastructure, are typically paid for through property taxes and sales taxes. So to understand how we determine a property's assessed value, let me begin with Proposition 13, the law which governs property assessment and taxation in California. I hear all the time people say, well, I'm under Prop 13. If I move, will that affect me? Everybody's under Prop 13 all the time. There's never a moment that your property is not under Prop 13. So I'm not quite sure what they mean when you don't ever lose Prop 13. Prop 13 is what happens. That's the law that we apply. So if you had a home under a very low Prop 13 value and you move, you're gonna have a new high Prop 13 value. So this was a law that passed in 1970. What it says is that at the time you purchase your home, we determine the market value. Usually the market value is what you bought the property for, and your tax rate is then set at 1% of that value. The market value on the day you buy your home becomes your assessed value. And from that point on in California, typically, the market value will continue to increase while your assessed value will remain relatively stable, except that annual 2% adjustment. As you can see in the, just to illustrate a little bit more, as you can see in the bottom left corner, your assessed value and fair market value begin at the same point. This is considered your tax base. The blue line, the fair market value, fluctuates over time depending on market conditions. Fortunately for all of us in California, that number continues to increase. So over time, you're going to have the market value of a property is going to begin to exceed your assessed value, and all that is essentially equity that you have in your home. I want to transition to another issue which has been on a lot of people's minds for the last few years. It's an amendment to Prop 13 that was passed in 2020, and this is called Proposition 19. And Prop 19 does two essential things. The first one is very beneficial. It allows anybody who is 55 years or older, severely disabled, or those who are a victim of a natural disaster, such as the recent fires in Altadena and the Palisades, it allows you to transfer your tax base when you sell your home and buy a new one. So let's say you bought your home in 1990 for $100,000, and today it's worth $800,000, and you decide you want to move someplace else, and you buy an $800,000 house. It means your tax base on your new home is going to be the same as it was on your old home. You're not going to get a tax increase. It allows you to transfer your tax base 3 times or 6 times if you're married. So once you turn 55, you can keep moving and your taxes will always stay the same. You can move anywhere in the state of California, and you can buy a home of greater value and transfer your tax base. However, if you transfer your tax base to a home which is more valuable than the one you're selling, you will get a new adjusted tax rate. It'll be lower than the market rate, but it will essentially transfer the tax base of the property that you're selling to the new one on a like-for-like value, and then the value that exceeds that will be assessed at market value. The other part of Prop 19, which is proving to be extremely unpopular, deals with family inheritance. So under the previous law, you could inherit your parents' property, and whatever value that home was, you could pay the same taxes as your parents. Additionally, if your parents had other property, say a rental, the first $1 million in value was exempted from reassessment. That's all changed to the Prop 19. Now the only property that you can inherit from your parents with the property tax benefit is the home that your parents live in. And for you to qualify for the tax benefit, you need to move into that home within 12 months after the transfer, usually, typically on the date of death. And you have to file the homeowner's exemption. And then there's another caveat. Only the first $1 million in value on that home is exempted from reassessment. So if you have a home that was, if your tax base was $200,000, but the home is worth $1.5 million, you're only going to get that benefit on the first $1 million in value, and the second $500,000 is going to be assessed at market rate. I don't think people were aware of the trade-off with the family inheritance with the base year transfer when Prop 19 was affected. Otherwise, I don't think it would have passed. And there's been a couple efforts to try to repeal that family inheritance portion. Moving on to another issue that's is a big challenge for us in our office, deals with the death of a property owner. Now, under California law, you are required to tell my office when you die if you own property, or somebody is. When there's a death of a property owner, on the day of that death, that is a change in ownership, and there will be a reassessment of that property unless there's some exclusion. You are required to file a form. It's called a change in ownership statement, death of real property owner, within 150 days of the death of a property owner. You could be subject to a fine if you fail to do this, although I will tell you we don't really fine anybody because it's the 11 years I've been doing this. I think 100% of the people fail to file this form on time. But the problem with not filing on time, the fine isn't the worst part of it. The worst part is going to be in estate planning and inheritance. You could end up getting penalties and supplemental tax bills if you don't get your affairs in order. You also have to take these steps even if your property is in a trust. A lot of people think that when their property is in a trust that there's like an autopilot. They put it in the trust and everything's fine. Mom and dad pass away and I don't have to do anything, which is not the case. Even if the trust is really just a set of instructions as to what will happen when the trustor passes away. You still have to file the change in ownership statement within 150 days. If there's inheritance, you have to move into the property within the 12 months, and you have to file the homeowner's exemption. You can still file if you miss the deadline, but you will be taxed at a market rate for that period in which you fail to submit your documentation. One of the things I just mentioned as a requirement for Prop 19 is filing of the homeowner's exemption. The homeowner's exemption is a tax savings program that's available to anybody who owns their home and uses it as their principal residence. It doesn't save a lot of money. The legislature set the rate back in the 1970s and they haven't changed it since then. It'll allow me to reduce your assessed value by $7,000 and saves you $70 a year on your annual property taxes. I know it's not a lot, but it is applied automatically annually, and for seniors or those on a fixed income, I'm sure that any savings would be important. We estimate that here in the city of Compton, that 48% of qualified homeowners do not apply for the homeowner's exemption, and the reason they don't apply is probably because they simply don't know about it. Just as a note to our city leaders, we have worked with cities in the past. Linwood actually mailed a letter to every one of their homeowners with a copy of the application urging them to fill it out and save money. And it doesn't cost you any property taxes from your revenues. And now before we move to Q&A, just I want to get ahead of by answering a couple questions, some of the most common questions that come up. One question is that when does my property get reassessed? You know, we do not drive around and look at your neighborhood and say, oh, they've made some improvements there, let's jack up the assessment on it. As I mentioned, our Prop 13, your home is assessed at the time that you acquire it. And that is locked in. So if you bought a home in 1980 for $50,000, today's worth $1 million, you're still being assessed on $50,000 plus that 2% annual increase. There are two primary reasons why your property might be reassessed. One is a change in ownership, and not a change in ownership where you sell the property, but a change in ownership when you add somebody's name or delete somebody's name from the deed. Anytime you change what names are on the deed, that is a change in ownership and it is reassessable. Here's a common example of this, that let's say there's some siblings, they inherited mom and dad's house, and one of them is living there as they're required to do it in Prop 19, but 2 or 3 years from now, the other siblings say, you know what, I don't want my name on that deed anymore, take it off. And so they file a quitclaim deed, but then the property owner who lives there gets a supplemental tax bill, and their tax rate goes up by, if there are 2 siblings, it'll go up by 2/3. And they'll be confused because nothing's changed, the same person's living there, nothing's different other than the name on a deed, but that is a legal change in ownership. The only time that a change in ownership will not be subject to a reassessment are transfers between spouses. So if you get married and add a spouse, or you get divorced and remove one, or between parents and children under Prop 19. But your second cousin, once removed, does not qualify. Your brothers and sisters do not qualify. Those are reassessable events. The other time your property might be reassessed is under new construction. And new construction is generally described as adding square footage, adding something that was not previously there. So if you if you decide to build an ADU, that ADU will be assessed. And the standard that we assess it at is market value. We usually use what's called a cost methodology to determine the market value of that property. But let's say your home was assessed at $500,000 and you build a $100,000 ADU, your new assessed value will be $600,000. The new construction doesn't cause us to reassess your whole property, just what's being added. And those are the 2 reasons why we'd reassess your property. So we talk about trust, but I think I already did that. Another issue that comes up, people are selling their home or they're buying one and they look at the assessor records and maybe they look at the city records and something's different. That maybe our records say it's a 2,500 square foot house and building and safety department says it's 2,000 square foot, you know, who's right? In this case, the city is right. The city is who can the entity which legally determines what can be on a piece of property. If there is a discrepancy, that would usually tell me that somebody did some unpermitted construction. And you could be on the hook for back taxes on the property, and the city could come in and tell you to tear it down because it's not compliant with their rules. But the fact that you've been paying taxes on that property and it's in my database and government database doesn't make it legal. We assess what we know to be there. We don't have an opinion on whether it's there legally or not. Just a couple of final notes I wanted to add is we have a couple of new services that are really helpful for the people in Compton. One of them is something called the Homeowner Alert. You're probably all familiar that in recent years there are increasing cases of title fraud. If somebody comes in and records a deed on your property without you knowing about it, then they get involved in all types of financial hanky-panky, and by the time you learn about it, it's a real chore to get your home back in your name, and they may have leveraged all types of debt against it that you are now responsible for. However, to combat that, we, along with the Registrar Reporter and the Department of Business and Consumer Affairs, we launched this program last year called the Homeowner Alert. Anybody who owns property can register their email address with their property, and if something's recorded on your property, you'll get an email notification within 48 hours. Now, we won't know whether it's fraud or not, but you will, because if you didn't record a grant deed and you get an email saying a grant deed was recorded on your property, you know something's wrong, and it will have instructions as to how to report that to the authorities. If you don't sign up for this, the first notification you're going to get that somebody screwed around with your property is a letter in the mail from the registrar recorder, usually 30 or 45 days after the episode, and by that time they can do a whole lot of damage to your financial status. So I encourage you to sign up for that, and encourage your constituents and friends and neighbors to sign up for that as well. A companion to that is what we call the Assessor e-service. This allows you, if you're a property owner, to register a profile on our website with your property, and this will allow you to do a lot of things with our office online, as opposed to having to come and stand in line or putting things in the mail. It will allow you to change your mailing address, file for the homeowner's exemption, in the event of a fire, you can file for the misfortune calamity property tax relief claim, and it should be a great help for members of the public, and certainly provides a do-it-yourself vehicle that saves my folks some time as well. So I've covered a lot of ground. I appreciate the opportunity to share these resources with all of you, and appreciate your time and attention, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments, and if you have complaints, Ian takes those.
Mr. Prang?
Yes, sir.
That was excellent. Can we get a PDF of this to send out?
This is a secret. You can't have this.
Okay.
Yes. No, yes, we can get. We'll get you a copy of this.
All right, appreciate it.
If there's some people taking pictures, but if you want a copy of the slides, we'll get those to the city and we can distribute them. Yes, sir.
I have a question. I want to be certain that I understand when you say that if on the what was that? The two people on the ownership, if a parent passed away, and on the deed, if one of the siblings decided they don't want to be on the deed, there's a different assessment now,
Yes.
but they must notify the office.
So-
Or do they?
So anytime there's a change in the ownership, our office needs to be notified. So let's say you and your brother inherit your parents' property, and you're living there, and your brother's not there, but the deed was put into both of your names. And a couple of years from now, your brother doesn't want to be on the deed. Maybe you pay him, buy him out, and you record a quitclaim deed. You will get reassessed at 50%. Your taxes will go up 50% because there was a 50% change in ownership. And the fact that you and your brother owned it together doesn't exclude you from being reassessed when that relationship changes. If on the other hand, it was you and your wife who inherited your parents' property, and then you get a divorce, there will not be a reassessment because reassessments are excluded between spouses. Yes, ma'am.
So what if you're married, your husband is divorced, wife claims the house to the husband, now he remarries, the husband remarries, and he adds the new wife to the deed, is that a change in ownership?
So, as long as one of the spouses who's an owner, the changing relationships will be exempted from reassessment. So if you have if husband and wife one own it, and then he divorces it and marries wife two, he can put her name on the deed and be exempt from reassessment. Yes.
When it comes to trust, like a family trust, and someone comes into the city and says, and they have the same last name as the trust, let's say it's a Smith Trust. So now Johnny Smith comes in and says, hey, I'm the receivership on this trust. Is there a document or what kind of legal documentation do we require in order for them to prove that they do have ownership over the trust and not another sibling or another family member?
So, Elson, do you know the answer to that? How does, it's the registrar recorder which makes that determination.
Oh,
But unless you're trying to do anything, it's just, if you're gonna try to change the name, you're gonna try to do something else.
so
Is that what you're saying?
In the city of Compton, when you apply for certificate of occupancy, you have to prove that you have ownership over the property. So a lot of times we're coming across people that, for example, the Smith Trust, and you have Johnny Smith coming to apply for read the property that the receivership is under Amy Smith, so how do we identify who has, is there a document or like a legal form that makes that person, you know, responsible for the trust?
So,
Am I explaining it right or no?
you know,
Like from a
you,
city's perspective, you're saying?
Yeah, from a city's
You're
perspective.
saying, how do you guys verify?
Yeah, how does it, because we've had people come in here and it'll be two different people and they're both claiming to have rights over a trust, and they both have the last name of the trust, but neither one of them can provide any legal documentation to show that they have legal rights over it. That's something we come across often.
I have to tell you, I need to look into that a little bit more, because that answer's not the tip of my tongue unless it is with you. I think there's
Usually ask for the complete trust
Right.
with the, documentation, but if it's the same name, that's a problem. They don't ask for the.
But they never come back, when you ask them for like a legal document, we never see them again, so I'm just wondering.
we do ask for certain documents to people to demonstrate that they are who they say they are. I don't know what those are offhand. When it comes to the trust, you know, we always ask for the entire trust so we can look at all the pages to make sure it's conforming to
We follow
our standards. And then depending on how the ownership is being reviewed, there may be a component that's reviewed by the registrar recorder. But they're the ones who keep the deeds. We maintain ownership in terms of for assessment purposes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Hey, me again, on this, property where, like I said, two brothers, and what defines inheritance if their parent passes away? So what defines say that they inherited property without
Well,
any documentation?
Well, the parents could give the property through a will or through a trust, or if they die without a will or a trust, the siblings under most legal standards, that the children of a deceased parent would have the first right to claim that property through probate. Yes, sir.
The city got reassessed 6.8%, that's more than the surrounding areas. I know you mentioned, boat, aircraft, what details did your office get to put the city at such a high?
So the city was not reassessed, it's just that the property values increased by 6.8%. So the type of work that we do every year in developing the assessment roll is we inventory all the transactions that took place, all the sales, all the changes in ownership. If you own a boat or an airplane, you're required to submit annual forms about the value and location of those properties, which help us determine their value and what to put on the assessment roll. So our whole, we're basically widget counters. We count all the widgets of land, buildings, and business personal property, such as airplanes, boats, and mobile homes every year. So we have a very good inventory of everything that's taxable in the city of Compton, to the degree that we're aware of it. I will tell you that a lot of private aircraft owners do a very good job of hiding their aircraft, and we're trying to. Do you have an airport in Compton? So one of the things we've discovered is that private airplane operators, they may have their plane here in Compton, but they register it. They like to register them in Utah, and unfortunately, the Federal Aviation Administration has provided rules to help private airplane owners to hide their registration from local authorities. So we actually lose a lot of property taxes in aircraft because they register them out of state or they hide their registration. Although I'm on the verge of getting a new technology that will help us to identify more and more of those aircraft. If you own an aircraft, you're probably somebody who can afford the property taxes on it, and you should be paying them. Yes,
Me
sir.
again, and honestly, I'm not trying to extend the time here.
Sure, no, it's okay.
Okay, only you had something about homeowners alert.
Yes.
Now, I saw a phone number on there, but everything went by quickly. But, you were saying that, you could email them to get on the list, so if someone is trying to,
So we're giving you the opportunity to register on our website to subscribe to the homeowner alert. You can do it through this QR code here, or you can go to our website and under homeowner alert, it will give you instructions as to how to register. They're basically going to ask you to find your property address and then enter your email address so that you can get those alerts. It's very simple. It's like subscribing to a newsletter.
Okay. No cost.
No cost. And you can do it if you own multiple properties, you can subscribe for all of them.
Thank you.
Real quick, are there any penalties or consequences for those hiding those aircraft?
If we learn that that aircraft was being housed in California, we can get what's called escaped taxes. We can usually go back, depending on the nature, between 4 and 8 years in back taxes. If we learn that they were actually being housed here and that they were, I guess technically it might be a violation of the law to represent that you're registered in Utah but housed here. We're not an enforcement agency though, we just go after the assessments and back taxes. One last thing I'll mention, just because it's a point of particular pride for me, but the assessor's not, you might not understand this, but the assessor is not the most glamorous elective office. It's not like being the mayor. We spend most of our time explaining to people we're not the tax collector, but we do some pretty important things. When I was elected in 2014, I inherited a technology system. It was an old 1970s era mainframe, green screen, DOS-based platform. And for those who work in government know that there's a lot of major government agencies that are still on these old antique mainframe systems. If you ever wonder why the Department of Motor Vehicles or the EDD are so inefficient, it's because they're still using these 60-year-old mainframe systems. And that just wasn't working for us. So during my time as assessor, we've invested over $130 million to upgrade our technology platform. We went from an old mainframe system to a new digitized cloud-based system. We digitized over 2.5 million property files, which used to be all kept in paper form. And we went live with our new system last year, which allows us to do things such as the homeowner alert, the online services, but most importantly, following the fires, my department plays a huge role in fire response. We have to lower the values of all the properties that were damaged or destroyed. And then we have to monitor them over the next several years as they rebuild. We estimated right away that during the fires, that would take 100 appraisers about 9 months to adjust the values on the 18,000 properties that were destroyed. But our new technology system, which went live last August, allowed us to build tools. We were able to reassess all the properties within 90 days. And as a result, the auditor controller was able to get property tax refunds to all those people who lost their properties. And then the real magic part of it is we knew we were going to derive a lot of efficiencies from this new system. We didn't know how much, but we ended up saving through these efficiencies 45,000 personnel hours in the spring because of how expedited we were able to process the fire damage. And with those hours, we were able to take a big bite out of this structural backlog I had in processing new construction permits. And so all the money that the county lost in the fires, we were able to restore. So we thought the county was going to lose about $200 million in property tax revenues because of the fires, but these efficiencies with our new technology platform allowed us to recover those almost in full by the time we closed the assessment roll in June. It was a remarkable project that took almost 10 years to complete. The value that it's going to provide to LA County is immeasurable. Most people will never know, but it's really going to change how we do our business and how we provide service to the people in the county. And Compton will get its money faster and more thoroughly.